All right. Well, you guys know who I am. I'm Lisa Hepkin. I'm the director and advisor of the program. And so tonight, what we're going to be doing is I'm going to give a brief overview of the program. And then I have a video recording of our faculty spotlight, who is Bryn Orum. But real quickly, let's talk about uh, the program. So I'm just going to tell you about who's in the program. So I just introduced myself, Lisa Hepkin, the director and advisor, my contact information there. And while they're not joining us tonight, I always like to share who our two teaching assistants are. And the reason I like to share that is I want everyone to know that students are really well supported in our classes. So each class will have a TA assigned. So this year we have Claire Bauman as well as Mariana Bruno. And so both of them are in the EDS program for school psychology. So let's talk about the reason you're here. The MISPE program is a fully online program. It is 30 credit hours. We follow a cohort model. And what we are really proud of is that this program really takes into account the things that you want to strengthen. And I always like to give for an example. In the very beginning, you'll take a course, Education Research. And what's really great about that course is you are diving into a topic of your own choosing, where you're doing an annotated bibliography, a literature review around a topic you are most interested in. You're going to learn from leaders in the field. So, educational psychology, number one, educational psychology in the country. But you're also learning from faculty in curriculum instruction, as well as educational leadership and policy analysis. We have the star there in educational psychology because that is where you'll get your degree from, but you will work with instructors across the School of Education. So that's a feature that we find really unique to our program. So I'm going to real quickly talk about each of our courses. And again, if you have questions, you can put them in the chat or feel free to speak up. I know for some of you that this is going to be a little bit of a repeat, but talking about collaborative teamwork for inclusive school reform, this is all about what's going on in our organizations. How is it that we can work with one another in order to make the changes that we feel need to be made? Whose voices are we missing in this conversations? Whose are the most loudest? And how do we know that? This course, I always like to tell folks, is that it does have synchronous times and they are on Wednesdays and they will be from 3 to 5:30 in the afternoon. And I can share those dates with you if you haven't already gotten them. And I think Sandra, you've gotten those dates already.
That was for the summer, correct?
That is for the summer. Yep.
Yeah.
And it's only that first summer where you're going to see those synchronous times a little bit earlier.
Okay.
Any other time that you see synchronous times, they will be in the evening, anywhere from 5 to 8 p.m. Central Time. And, for those courses, you might see 2 to 3 times that you would meet synchronously. But as in the title, collaborative teamwork, this is a very collaborative course. The reason that it's there the first summer is that we're intentional for you to get to know the folks in your program. So
Sure.
you will know everyone in your cohort. The other course happening that summer is engaging with education research. And this is that example I was giving where you're diving into that research topic of your own choosing. So then you're coming in the fall, we have thinking and learning. And this is a course where you are looking at 8 different theories of cognition. And I like to give one example of what happens in this course as a hands-on activity is that you are actually going to be required to teach yourself a new skill. And as part of that process, you're going to use those 8 different theories of cognition and reflection to think about how did you obtain those skills? How can you use that information moving forward as you work with others in your organization or in your school? What worked for you, what didn't, and why? Really dissecting that. And then one of the first courses for Foundations of Instructional Coaching, that's for that embedded instructional coaching certificate. And we use 3 different gurus of instructional coaching. Those being Jim Knight, who talks about the impact cycle. And he is all about how do we ask those really powerful, reflective questions. Diane Sweeney, who has student-centered coaching, using student evidence to make decisions. And then we use Elena Aguilar. And that's all about how do we create these trusting relationships in order for people to be vulnerable with us. And then in the spring, we have assessment analysis and instructional decision making. This is going to be a 4 credit course, a little bit different than what you see on the website right now. And this is a course that is also part of that certificate. And this is all about diving into data, evidence, and how do we use this information to inform our instruction? And even more importantly, how do we talk to others about it? That's the first year. Any questions about that?
So I think you said we had to learn a new skill. That's for thinking and learning.
Hmm.
Can it be any skill?
It can. So, to give you some examples, an individual taught themselves how to sew, use a sewing
Oh,
machine. Another individual did crocheting. Another one wanted to learn a new video game, and they worked with their child to teach them. Uh, Spoiler alert, it didn't go well. And yeah, and so, yeah, just about any skill.
okay.
Yeah, does it help?
Yep. I'm thinking either like painting or drawing. I don't know
Yeah.
how to do either of those. I've always wanted to learn, so maybe that's something.
Yeah, and that's what we really love about this program. Again, you're taking these pieces of things you've always wanted to be able to do, and it's part of the program. Um, and and it's this reflective piece, it's not just done in this isolation. It has a purpose. So coming back that second summer, you're doing Understanding Legal Rights and Responsibilities, and this is taught by Suzanne Eckes. And she is someone who really talks an individual through what's happening in the Supreme Court, very US centric, around policies and laws that you need to know. We have students who typically start this course and say, I'm not interested in this course. And every single student walks out of it and said, I should have had it years ago. Love it. One of their favorite courses. It actually is a course that counts towards the Wisconsin Principalship Program as well. So if you ever decide that that might be the future for you, you have at least one course under your belt for that. And then we have supporting students' social emotional well-being, and this is really diving into the entire person that shows up in front of you. So whether that be a colleague or whether that be a student, we know that an entire person doesn't just come to get from you what you know. They come to us with lots of different things and lots of different needs. And so how do we support them? And then also, how do we support ourselves so we can stay continuing to do this good work? And then in the fall, we have the capstone project, and this is actually a course that I teach. And this is where you are choosing a topic of your own and you are diving into it to become that expert. So you can do an implementation project. Maybe you've always wanted to create a new teacher mentoring program for your organization. Or maybe you've always wanted to do some action research, like you have always done this thing in your classroom or for your school, and now you want to collect some data and be able to say, like, I know this really works because. Or maybe you want to do straight research because you're thinking about going on to get your PhD. This capstone project allows for that. You will be surrounded with a committee, somebody who's a subject matter expert, as well as somebody who has graduated from the course that will support you in the project itself, and then somebody of your own choosing. And again, topics have really ranged vastly in this area. So we had an individual who looked at reading legislation and whether or not that legislation had an impact on third and fourth grade reading skills. As we looked at Act 20 coming to Wisconsin, they were very interested in that. We had an individual create a new teacher mentoring program for their school. We've had people create professional development opportunities. They wanted to implement mental health first aid into their district. And so wanted to know how to get that, not just for the educators in the building, but for students as well. So moving through that process. So you'll dive into the research, which you started back into the summer, and you will bring all of that learning through. You'll be supported all the way. And then finally, you will have the practicum for instructional coaching. And this is 4 credits, again, a little bit different than what's on the website. We've gone through some changes. And this is all about working with a trusted colleague. We will use a lot of video. You will work with triads. You will work with somebody in your own organization, and you will do coaching. So you will feel very confident all the way through. You're doing coaching all the way through, but this is where you're really going to shine and hone in those skills. Questions about the program as a whole?
During our project, I know you said you supported us throughout the whole thing, and we kind of get more ideas as along the way, right, of like what type of project it could be.
Yeah, in every single course that you take in every single semester, you actually have a little planning guide that you'll work with about like, hey, this is what I'm thinking about now, or this is what I'm thinking about. And each of the courses actually sort of builds a few of the different components of the capstone. But I start to meet with you after the first year of your program to start honing in on what is that question, that burning question you've always wanted to answer. And we get really tight on that question. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So, what we're going to talk about tonight is actually the thinking and learning course, which is why you're here. But before we do that, I just want to remind folks is that as part of this degree is that you will also have that instructional coaching certificate. What's going to be a little bit different is we're working on having this degree actually have the name of an instructional coach. So instead of an embedded certificate, it will be as part of the degree, instructional coaching. So just stay tuned for that. You're getting a little snippet around what's coming up in June. So, who has joined the program? Right now, we have about 25 students who are actually already part of the program, Sandra being one of them. So, congratulations. But from a variety of different areas, as well as different parts of the country as well. And so, you name it, we have had people be part of this program. And why do they choose us? High quality, #1 school of education, that online learning, and that strong support that we have for learners. So I am going to be quiet and I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of my PowerPoint. And I have asked Bryn to record her information about thinking and learning. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn this up and let's hear from Bryn.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bryn Orum, and I am really excited to be able to share this recording with all of you to tell you a little bit more about Psych 501, which is the class that I am lucky enough to teach in the MISPE program. My hope in this presentation is to let you get to know a little bit more about me and give you sort of a peek into the course, which is one of many incredible experiences in the MISPE program. So let's get started. Before we get into the course, I want to tell you a little bit more about myself. I am one of the directors of the Greater Madison Writing Project, which is at the School of Education at UW-Madison. The bulk of the work that I do in that role is professional development with educators around the teaching of writing. I have a really good job and I get to work with very cool teachers from across the state and across the country. And I feel really lucky to have this position. I'm a Badger myself. I graduated with a master's degree in curriculum and instruction from the School of Education at UW-Madison way back in 2010. Another thing that I really enjoy getting to do is working with the MISPE program. I've had a lot of different roles in MISPE over the years, but have settled into this one facilitating and leading Psych 501, thinking and learning. A lot of my professional interests sort of circulate around professional development, really building professional communities for educators as lifelong learners. Prior to this work, I helped start a public charter school that is in Middleton, which is located just outside of Madison. And so I'm really interested in innovation in education and youth advocacy. My favorite thing about teaching 501 is that learning about theoretical frameworks helps us understand a little bit more about what's going on in front of us in our classrooms and for our students. But it also allows us to understand our own experiences as learners. There are many aha moments and light bulbs that go on for people during 501, and I love getting to see that and being a part of it. So let's talk a little bit about the class from sort of a 500-foot perspective. Logistically, the class is a semester, which shakes out to about 14 weeks. We will cover 8 theories, uncover 2 myths about thinking and learning. There are generally about 4 weekly assignments and 1 final paper. We're going to go a little bit deeper into each of these areas of study right now, but this is the whole collection of theoretical frameworks that we will look into and build some understanding around as we move throughout the course. So let's get into that. I'm going to go through each one of the frameworks that we work with in 501 and just tell you a little bit about the perspective that each framework brings to us as learners to help us think about thinking and learning in new ways. So the course is going to start off with something called distributed cognition. And distributed cognition is a theoretical framework that helps us understand the ways in which cognition is distributed into and within our environment. So this is really helping us think about and look at tools, people, time, and space. How is our intelligence built into those things that are around us? How does it shape the way that we think about problems? And how does it impact the way that we engage in our environment? This is a really interesting theory to start with because it changes immediately the way that we look at any space that we're in and helps us think about what that offers us and what we could do to leverage it for our own learning or the learners in our classroom. Discourse is the next framework that we work with. And while distributed cognition sort of takes a very big view of all of the things in our space, discourse goes to a very narrow view of how we talk to and engage with one another. So this is going to look at the specific spoken interactions between student and student or student and teacher in a classroom. Discourse theory helps us question and get interested in how the words that we use impact learning, how the words do things for us, and how we learn from the language of learning in a content area or a classroom itself. We will also at this time investigate how our positionality in conversation and discourse or structure for particular interactions impacts the way we communicate and therefore learn. This is also a time when we'll talk a little bit about how we use language to scaffold learning for students. From here, we move to situated cognition. And situated cognition offers us an opportunity to think about how tools shape what we learn and how we learn it. So situated cognition really thinks about context and how and why context matters in building skills and learning new things. We behave differently in different situations. We also speak differently in different situations. Classrooms are really different than real world scenarios. So situated cognition helps us think about and understand those contexts and how the knowledge that we build in one space is a tool, but that we use it differently depending upon where we are, who we're with, and what we're trying to do with it. This brings us into information processing. And information processing, like the graphic illustrates here, really encourages us to think about the ways in which human thinking is similar to the ways we would think about a computer program. What are the patterns, the formulas, the schemas that we use to understand a problem space and to solve that problem space? What templates do we have that hold knowledge for us about particular issues? Solving problems means executing the right sort of production rules, are known steps to solve a problem. And so we'll think about the ways in which this shows up in our school learning, the ways that it's really useful, and the times in which it limits our opportunity to transfer that knowledge to a different context or situation. Narrative intelligence, in some ways, kind of pushes back on the idea of information processing and says that not all of our knowledge can be held in formulas or schemas, but that our knowledge is built from and built into stories and narratives that we hear from one another and that we tell ourselves. So, narrative intelligence, in this space, we're going to look at how people use stories to understand the world. What are the scripts that we have about ourselves, about our learning, about the world around us? And how do all of those things impact the way that we learn? How do they teach us things? When are they an advantage to us, and when do they restrict our learning or our development? From here, we move into looking at the theory of expertise. And this really breaks down the process by which someone becomes an expert at something. So, the theory of expertise understands the progression from novice to expert and helps us think through the individual stages, how we know we're at a particular stage, what we need at each stage, and how we move from one to the next. In expertise, we'll think a lot about the experiences, specifically the types of experiences that lead us to progress on our journey towards expertise, and how we use reflection to understand what we know and understand where we're at in our development. From here, we move into embodied cognition. And the theory of embodied cognition acknowledges that our bodies play a role in how we think and learn. We are not just a computer or a story or an event, but we are embodied humans, and our knowledge and our memory is grounded in our physical experiences. Embodied cognition says that bodies don't just function as containers for information, but they themselves are really critical to the tangible experiences that we have in the world. They hold our feelings, they hold our knowledge, and we use our bodies to make sense of the world. We'll talk a lot about gestures like the ones I'm making right now, and how those are linked to feelings and memories. And we end our investigation into theoretical frameworks by looking into hybrid mind. During the week where we look at hybrid mind, we'll actually sort of look backwards in order to look forwards. And we'll think about how we understand human cognition evolving over time. As we look back, we'll notice that there are key social and communication changes in evolution and experience that foster new leaps in culture and thinking and learning and evolution. We'll also acknowledge that it's really impossible to understand completely thinking and learning through any of the one theories that we've learned alone, but we'll layer them and think about the ways in which they exist in relationship to one another, what they offer us as we are able to look through multiple layers to understand what's going on for ourselves and what's going on for our students. In Hybrid Mind, we will talk about how we are a part of and engaging in the next big leap in human cognition, and that is our relationship with technology. We'll think about and question how modern technology doesn't just store our information, it transforms it. It doesn't just remember things for us, it starts to think with us and for us. And this will lead to a new level of social transformation and therefore a new level of human cognition. We just don't know what that is yet. So, that is a look at the content that is a part of 501. Let's talk a little bit about the course design. Like many of your courses, our core home base for 501 will be in Canvas, as well as all of your assignments and your individual and group work. Our general course flow, when we're working with a new theory, which is most of the weeks of the course, will offer you the opportunity to engage with readings and videos. Each week, there's a video from David Williamson Schaefer, who is the faculty designer of this course. You'll get to know him, his jokes, his ways of thinking about each of these theories as he sort of ushers us into considering new ideas each week. Each week, you'll also have the opportunity to engage in discussion with your peers in the class and reply to various posts that emerge throughout the week. There is an individual implementation assignment each week. And like it sounds, this is an opportunity for you to practice applying the ideas to your own experiences. We'll also have a group workshop each week, which is a discussion with a small group. You'll be with a small group throughout the entire course. And that discussion is going to be focused around a prompt, a question, or an idea that relates to the content of the week. Lastly, there are 3 times throughout the course where we'll work on an application activity. And this is going to be an opportunity to learn, and then an opportunity to teach, and lastly, an opportunity to observe through the lenses that we study. So this is an experience that is really fun, allows us to put our knowledge into action, ask a lot of really good questions, and hopefully see things in a new light. That's it for me. I encourage you to please reach out if you have any questions. You can reach me at my email here or through Lisa. And I am really happy to have had the opportunity to talk with all of you. Thank you, Lisa, for letting me make a recording so I could be here virtually. And I hope that this has sparked your interest in 501 as part of your MITSB journey. And that I hope that I get to think and learn with all of you in the near future. Thanks so much. Don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions.
All right. So thank you, Bryn. I'm going to ask, I know we are at time. If you guys have any questions for me, I'm going to stop sharing.
Yeah, so I was curious if the recording will be sent out following the webinar today.
It will be, yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
Thank you.
It'll be available on our website as well.
Amazing.
Yeah. Sandra, did you have a question too?
No, I was just gonna say that I think I've asked as many questions as I can so far. But if I come up with anything, I know I can email you.
Okay. Well, I've appreciated you guys both being on here. And as Roger said, it'll take a few days for the recording. But actually, Nina and Sandra, I have your emails, and I will just send you the recording that I have of Bryn. So you don't have to wait for it at all for it to come up as Roger kind of puts all of this together. But yeah, so thanks for being on tonight. And I hope that you have a great evening. I'm going to hang out here in case you have any other questions too.
I just have one quick question. Do we get like UW emails?
Yeah, let me go ahead and stop the recording.